Welcome to Rich in Relationship. And today we're with Raquel Pinto, who's a parenting coach from Happy Parents. She is an expert in how to have happier parents and happier children. How are you today, Raquel?
I'm very good. Thank you so much for having me over your podcast, Rich.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. You know, I met Raquel virtually, like I meet so many people today, and you are based in Ireland, yeah?
Yes, I am. I'm based in Dublin at the moment.
But
I'm Portuguese living in Dublin. Yes.
Of course, you can work anywhere. So that's what's so cool about the world today is thanks to the internet and all the different apps that we have. I'm not going to push any particular one. You know, we can connect to people and help them. And so the first question I ask everybody is, how did your heart lead you to do the work that you do?
Okay, so that's an interesting question. Thank you so much. So basically, it happened to me, I will say, but I have my eldest son. He's 12 now. And I, as any or so many parents, I've struggled so much with my first child. So either because I wanted to be perfect, I wanted his bringing up to be perfect. I wanted to give him the best. So we all want to give our children the best. And basically in all these things, I got into motherhood believing that I knew it all, because I have read, because so many people have taught me so much about it. Mm-hmm. And then nothing was as I was expecting to. So for me, I guess it was when all started, or as it all started. And along the way, I began understanding that my son had a particular personality that didn't fit into any of the book's descriptions or any of the things that I was reading advices. So I didn't know much where should I go to or what would be the correct path to go to. And of course, as with any other child, lots of trial and error and lots of things. And until I basically understood that no one was actually helping me in understanding my child and knowing exactly how to deal with him. He didn't have any kind of medical condition, no ADHD nor any other kind of thing. So no one was actually helping me or guiding me through this journey. And after so many trial and errors, I'm a certified coach. I did this certification due to my work. And through all my personal endeavors within personal development, I came across a specific training of child and parenting coaching. And I thought, why not? This might help me understanding my child and becoming a better parent myself. So basically, that's how I got into the parenting coaching side of coaching. That until then, I did not even knew that was a thing and that actually existed. And I did a training for my own development as a mother. And I soon understood that it was a super powerful one that was giving me so many tools that I could actually use with my son, or that were so effective with being used with children. And I was basically blown away of all these effects. And in a really short time, I began sorting the issues that I was having for years and years and years with my son. And basically, I saw that there was hope, and there was a way of dealing with parenthood in a more, I would say, harmonious way, because each day before arriving home, I was already stressed, not only because of my day, but because I was arriving home and it would be like, I don't know what's
going to happen with my son today. Yeah,
exactly. What will be the thing today? So what will happen today? And it was like stress piling up. My family was completely out of balance. It was so it was a bit of a struggle to have our family having, I will call it, a normal meal together, or something like a normal I don't know, activity, family activity together. Everything was a struggle. And when beginning to put these tools and the things that I was learning in place, I began understanding that there was a way, there was light at the end of the tunnel. There was a way of having a happy family, of being a happy parent and being happy with parenthood.
Yeah.
So basically that's why and how I got into this parenting coaching.
Yeah. One of the big discoveries for me as someone who helps couples to have a healthier relationship so that children are better cared for. It's like related to what you do, but not the same. But one of the big discoveries, and you would think I would know this, is there's a big difference between couples. It's actually the distinction is more important than getting married. A big difference between those who have had children and those who have not. There's that when you have a child together, it cements the relationship and pressures it also in a way that's so different and so much more intense than the actual act of getting married. So yeah, of course, having a child brought on a lot of tension. And I think that the reaction of most parents is they try and just make it work, or they read a lot. The problem with reading a lot is that children don't come out of a cookie cutter. Each one is unique and special. Each one is a unique combination of genetics, emotional history in the families, the culture they grow up in, the family they grow up in. All of that makes them unique, a unique combination of skills and talents and abilities. Each child is unique. So even though all these books are helpful, they can't tell you exactly what to do. And so I love that in your journey, you found the background that you needed to really show up for your son as an individual, as a member of your family, as a future member of society. That's so cool.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today, is how do we show up for our children in a way that really supports them to be all of who they can be. And there's this tension between we're all supposed to fit in and be part of the wider society, and at the same time we're magnificent, unique creations with incredible potential.
It's true. And I guess the main challenge of nowadays is exactly that. How do we keep our individuality doing and acting as everybody else expects us to? So, and it's a great challenge for any adult. But I would say that children are also in this loop, and many times I would say probably we never think of them as being part of this society, or of these all expectations that everyone has around them, without allowing them to be themselves and to act as individuals. And so it's not that I'm like any kind of fundamentalist with this, but in school they are expected to have a certain behavior, and everyone has to fit in that behavior. And if they do not, they are automatically labeled as something. So, and how do they deal with this? How do the families deal with this? How do explain them that it's okay to be different? And to be themselves. So it's a lot. I
can't tell you how many conversations I've had with parents whose children are labeled in some way that goes like this, where I explain to them the school system is designed for the medium, because that's where most of the kids fit the medium. They want to help the most kids that they can with the simplest system. And the problem is that your child is outside of the medium. That's a good thing, though. Like, it means your child is exceptional in some way. Like, if your child has special developmental needs, skills, and abilities that don't fit into the medium. Do you want your child to be a medium? No, everybody wants their child to be exceptional. And then the light bulb goes off and they go, oh, the problem isn't my child. The problem is the system.
Exactly. But I guess the challenge here is how to deal with this, or how to balance this.
Yeah, you're still exactly. So like, what's your choice? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to go move to the woods and get off the grid and homeschool my child. But most people aren't equipped for that, nor do they desire that. So yeah, that is a great question. So how do we balance out the developmental needs of our children so that they can really blossom and grow. And let's face it, the other part is, if you blossom and grow, what really is fulfilling, because we're social animals, is how your blossoming and growing benefits the wider society. So it's not, it's not that the system is against our children. It's it's figuring out how to integrate them.
Exactly, how to integrate and even navigate the system, I would say. And so, Rich, the other day when we were speaking about our own journeys in the coaching and personal development field. And as coaches, we are aware that there were loads of things during all our lives that shaped us into the adults that we become. And we got into the personal development field to improve something in us with which we were not as happy as we believed that we could, or whatever. And I guess this brings us some awareness of things that happened behind that could have been managed differently. And this doesn't mean that we all will still making mistakes during our journeys and doing things in a less correct way, but we have a different awareness of small things that can be done probably while raising a child, avoiding that child like to suffer with this difference in school, or how to deal with improper comments from any colleagues or friends, or this kind of thing. So how to deal with this in a positive way rather than a negative way, or in a traumatic way, let's say. So how not to give our children limiting beliefs that will not allow them to stagnate in their lives or in any way, just due to this need to fit in. So I guess this is a very interesting topic. And in small things, I don't know, the typical ones are probably around money. Yeah. Children want everything, and parents say, no, we cannot afford that, or we are not rich language. People.
Terrible languaging around money, but yes.
Exactly, but this is exactly. Yeah, I brought this one because this is, I guess it's an international one, and everyone, even the most aware people, use this. Sometimes even myself, knowing the damage that this kind of language has, when I'm too stressed or even myself overwhelmed, I go to the supermarket and they come with me and they're asking me things each second, or I don't know, I reach to a point we cannot afford that. So it's a typical one, but this is...
So wait, for our audience, what do we really want to say? If like I said, I made this judgment, that's terrible languaging around money. And so, let me just explain to the audience, terrible languaging around money, because it communicates to your children that we don't have enough. And that's not really what's happening though. So, so Raquel, what's really happening, and what is it that we really want to say to them?
What is really happening is showing them that we have to make good choices around the way we are spending our money. We have to have limits. So there are limits in life. Even if we are the richest person, we won't be going into the supermarket and buying everything that's on the shelves. It's just a matter of organization and understanding what actually do we need, what actually we will indulge in. Not that we need, but that we want to indulge in. But there are limits to this.
And we set them.
Exactly. And we should be the ones setting them. But children need to understand this, that it's not that we are living lacking anything. It's just that we don't need the excess of things.
Or alternatively, that we have other things we want to do with that money, or maybe there's a lesson we want to teach them about if you really want that. Here are some steps you can take to work towards it. There's all kinds of ways to structure it that isn't about, the problem with saying something, from my point of view, the problem with saying something like, yes, we can't afford it, is it's disempowering to me personally if I say that. It's like saying, yes, yeah, it's like saying there's limits on what I can earn, there's limits on what's available. And the truth of the matter is we live in the wealthiest, like around the world. Like, even though here in the West, it's really extravagant, around the world, there's more available than there ever has been.
Yes. Yes,
I mean, even
it
in
is
the
true.
poorest nations, there's still more available than there ever has been. The problem is not, is there enough? The problem is, how is it being distributed? And that's kind of
Exactly.
what we're communicating to our children, when we're talking about how we spend our money. It's the problem isn't how much there is, it's how are we going to distribute it? No, we're not going to buy bubble gum today, because that's not something that's going to be helpful for your future today. And so speaking of that, how that's one way is we can start to help them have a frame around the relationship that we have with with money, with society. What are some ways that we can really uplift our children and encourage them to develop in terms of their skills and their talents, and also who they are as people?
So there are lots of things, and even shortly ago we were speaking about giving our children the possibility of making any kind of activity they like, for instance. And we know as parents that children will end up to come to a point where they want to give up whatever they are starting with. I don't know, a sport, an activity, music, learning some kind of playing an instrument or whatever. Here, the thing around this, it can teach them first that they can learn something, what it takes to become good at something, the efforts involved in this. More the what can teach them as well is how to compare yourself to others. Like, it's not the comparison per se, because it's rather limiting, but that there may be others that excel in something, and probably we don't, because either we don't like it enough, or we are not engaged enough. So it's like having and one of these, like either sports or playing a musical instrument, it's a good way to have our children try something out, see how it works for them, and making them, or helping them making their own choices. And we were speaking about certain cultures or types of people that will not allow the kids to give up on playing the instrument or having that sports
Can I just step in
activity.
for a second? So for our audience, we were having a conversation before the show started about the difference between East and West, and how in Eastern culture, there's a tendency to, once a child picks up an instrument, to really encourage them to stick with it and follow through and become, to develop their skill, regardless of whether they're going to go to the Philharmonic or not, just that there is value simply in the development, and there's very little room for quitting. Whereas in the West, what we tend to do is we say, oh, that doesn't feel so good, try something else. So this is what Raquel's speaking to. And what I'm wondering about, what I was wondering, Raquel, is, like, given that we're not in the East, where do we draw that line between they're just not interested, or maybe it just isn't a good fit? I'm sorry, that was what I meant. They're just not interested, or are they just, they're undisciplined, right? Like, sometimes when we pick up an instrument, and I can speak from personal experience, it's something that we want to do, but we're just not disciplined. Discipline is something we need to learn. So the desire might be there, but what we're coming up against isn't lack of interest. It's a part of our character that has not yet been developed. How do parents find that space between character development and it's just not a good fit?
So I would say that the key there, it's actually the dialogue with children. But usually, and depending on the culture, there is this thing that the parents are the one who know. So the parents won't be getting into speaking with the child about this activity, how the child feels about the activity. Does the child likes the activity? Why is the child willing to give up? It's because he wants to try something else. It's because it's child doesn't feel that he's doing his best, or has no interest. So there are lots of things that can explain what's happening. And the thing that I as parenting coach believe that has to be done here, it's having a conversation with the child. even if we are speaking about a 5-year-old that wants to give up of any activity that just started, but understanding what is the feeling of the child around this thing. So why does the child wants to give up that sports activity? It's because of something that is going on there. I don't know. There's so many things around it, and I can give you here a few examples about this. Like, usually it's because there is something that is provoking some kind of discomfort in the child. I guess the first thing when talking to the child is understanding where this discomfort is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So, and understanding where the discomfort is coming from, we as parents can understand if it's just giving up, if it's a reasonable thing that happened that it's provoking this feeling in the child. What is happening? I would say that the first thing that we should understand and what's happening behind that feeling of willing to give up. Children and even adults, yes, even adults, we, as you were saying, we lack discipline. When something is turning into a very difficult thing, our first will is to give up because we like facility, and children are not different. They like the facility of things, and if something is turning into a difficult thing, they will wish to give up. And here, I guess, understanding the reasoning behind this wish of the child is the first step to the parents to take a decision, whatever it is, if allowing the child to give up or if insisting and see how it goes. And I can give you even a personal example. Like, for instance, my son did karate for many years. Like exactly this thing, because he had this personality. We thought it could be good for him to have some discipline, and we believed that it was a good idea. And every year it was the same thing. At the beginning of the scholar year, he didn't want it to go into karate classes, never. But we were saying to him, just let's try until the end of the year. Let's go, just do this grade more and let's see how it goes. He was doing the exam at the final of the year, the end of the year. He was doing his grade exam. He would excel at it, and he was super motivated and wanted to go to another year. So this was an example, and we understood that this was an ongoing thing, and we just stopped because of the pandemic. But until then, every year we were having the same cycle. So of course, this was taking him out of his comfort zone. Of course, he was doing things that he didn't like, but in the end, he actually felt it was okay doing it. So it wasn't something that was harming him nor anything. So we kept motivating him in a way for him to keep himself there, because we believed that this would develop the discipline in him, and even the fact, resilience. Like in sports, we may outperform once in a while, but we can continue training until we actually perform well in something.
I love that. And you know what I love about that story is I love that the goal is not that he was going to become Bruce Lee, who wasn't a karateka, by the way. As we all know, he was really into Kung Fu and he mixed martial arts. But the goal really is the personal development that comes through the practice. And so,
yes.
You know, what I love about that story is there's a message there that, you know, our child can pick up guitar or violin or karate or soccer or painting or sculpture, and they don't have to be the greatest. It's more about, are they enjoying it and how are they developing and growing through the experience? And it's sort of like the antithesis of, you know, I don't know how it is in Ireland, but for a while, and I think they still do this nonsense, kids would go do soccer and everybody would get a participation award, right? And one of the problem with the participation award is it's very generic. You know, it doesn't really acknowledge the individual growth that happened in that practice. Even if your child was the worst football in Ireland or here soccer player, you know, on the team, he or she developed and grew in some way, and that participation award just squashes the acknowledgement of that individual development. And it's really, what we're talking about here is individual development. There's something about, for your son, there's something about that karate practice that is going to contribute to him being more and better and stronger in the rest of his life. And that's the value.
Yes, exactly. And this linking to the initial conversation of how can we support our kids in personal development, in excelling, or teaching them about resilience, about these sort of things that can limit themselves later in life. It's much of understanding, okay, what is he or she feeling around this specific thing? Is this contributing in some way for him or her learning about something that can be useful in life? So sometimes we say, or we see kids doing sports, and parents sometimes parents are more competitive than the children themselves. But in the end, it's about teaching
Yes, I was
kids.
one of those parents.
Who never? So in the end, it's just teaching about those kids, or teaching those kids how to deal either with good results or even bad results. Excellent.
And so, there's two things I want to throw in here. The first is, if you're a parent who's listening to this, or if you're not a parent who's listening to this, it's not, if you dreamed of playing guitar as a child or practicing a martial art or whatever, it's not too late for you to do that. If you dreamed it, if you yearned for it, you wanted it, there was something in that for you, and you can start that now. You're probably not going to be making movies doing, martial arts or guitar, but you will develop and grow through it. Like, if you feel a calling to something, don't ignore it, and don't say it's too late. And you can be mad at your parents for not encouraging you as a child, but that's not going to help you get whatever it is that thing offered. And if your child has that same thing, support them, encourage them. And also, if you're a parent who's listening to this, I have no doubt that you probably could use help from someone who really understands parenting, like Raquel. So Raquel, how can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
So they can easily find me at hello at happyparents.ie, or through my LinkedIn, that I will kindly ask you to share in the description or in the details of the podcast. And so we can have a conversation, an open conversation, just around any kind of struggle that parents may be feeling. But yeah. So
if you're listening to this right now, you can just go right to LinkedIn and put Raquel Pinto Happy Parents, and she'll pop right up in LinkedIn. But we will share all that in the notes as well.
Yeah.
And Raquel, the question I ask everybody at the end of the show is, what's the legacy that you want to leave behind?
The legacy I want to leave behind, I want to help as many parents as possible to have, or to turn their parenting experience into a good and pleasant experience, less lonely and supported one. I guess that is the main thing, because parenting can be very lonely. Parents tend to close themselves a lot around any issues they are struggling with. They feel uncomfortable or even ashamed of sharing with anyone that they are struggling with something. And sometimes it's a really easy fix. It's just a matter of speaking with the right person, and not everything may be serious enough to go into or to speak with a health professional. So the legacy I want to leave behind is actually to be able to help as many families as possible to enjoy their relationships with their kids, and turning them into strong and connected ones.
Fantastic. I love that. And I'm just going to throw in there, it's not unusual even for a parent to have trouble talking to the other parent about it. I mean, I've worked with a lot of couples where the communication breakdown is just not there. Communication is just not there. There's a breakdown in communication. And so it might be normal and natural even to talk to someone like Raquel, someone who understands what you're experiencing and where you want to go with this. Raquel, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It is, again, such a pleasure to speak with you and to lean into your wisdom and knowledge.
Thank you so much for the invitation, Rich.